What does a beautiful future look like to you?
You can flip a negative mood on its head.
This was a talk that was all over the place, but then New York, you are all over the place.
There are experiences that you just don't get anywhere else.
Hi, I am Brittany Luse, co-host and co-executive producer of The Nod with Brittany and Eric on Quibi, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to the 92nd Streetwise Talk, HBO's Lovecraft Country, Jurnee Smollett, and Misha Green in conversation. With the completion of the first season, we are thrilled to have the series showrunner, executive producer, director, and writer, girl, you are so busy, Misha Green here with us. And it's also great to have Jurnee Smollett, who brings Letitia Leti Lewis to life on screen. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
All right, so I just watched this finale last night. The time we're taping this, the finale was last night. So I was just watching the finale with everybody else. I picked my jaw up on the floor, and now I'm talking to you right now. So a major theme for me of the finale was reclaiming your magic. We see it with Hippolyta. We see it with Diana. We see it in Letty and in Tick to a certain degree. What do you hope viewers walk away with after witnessing each of these characters' full circle transformations in the season finale?
I mean, I think for me, it's really difficult to say what I want people to walk away with because my intentions of what I want might not be what they got from the art and what they experienced.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I guess it's more so I just want conversations to be had. I want us to talk about what that means to take our magic back. And how do you do that? And there's different ways to go about it. I think it's a conversation that we've been having in the Black community a lot, is how do we take the power back? And so I guess continuing that conversation, adding to it is what I hope people take from it.
Right. And, it's interesting because, one of the themes in the show for sure is this idea of taking your legacy back, right? But I feel like when we talk about taking your legacy back, it's really about how do you heal from your legacy? Like, how do you heal from the lineage and the generational trauma that we've all inherited, right? And it's true. It's not really something we can tell people or dictate people, on what the message or what they should take away, because that's art, right? Like you look at a painting and everyone's gonna see something completely different from each painting. But it's been amazing to see all the discussion. Like the discussion is live.
Yeah. And it's happening right now as we're talking.
It is. It absolutely is.
Literally, Misha sent me like a snapshot of something she saw on Twitter. And it's just like, wow, they're going in.
I think that's because it's a personal story. I think the story of being, Black in America is personal, and we so rarely get to really see it and unpack it at this level with this kind of budget. So I think that is part of it, where people have a lot of feelings because this is one of the first times that something this grand of a scope has been done about what it means to work through your trauma, what it means to take back your legacy and all of that stuff.
Jurnee, during the finale, we definitely see Letty, expressing a comfort with using magic that I hadn't really felt the rest of the season. It was like she really came into her power in that moment, and using magic, something that she had previously kind of accessed through Tick or kind of relied on Tick to use. Talk to me about what it felt like to be Letty in those moments where she really steps into her power.
Yeah, it is true what you say. Throughout the story, Letty and Tick have had varying degrees of opinions on magic and how we should use magic. And for the most part, Tick has been driving this like, yeah, but it's what we do with it, And Leti has been feeling like, but it's corrupting us. But like, look at what this is doing to us. It's the devil's work, you know. But it isn't until she steps into that ancestral plane, you know, when the ancestor tells her, do not make the same mistake. Do not let your fear cripple you, right? And that inevitably accelerates her into owning the calling on her life. She is carrying the very blood, the very lineage, right, in her body. And how dare she not honor that calling? There's no choice, right? The stakes are too high. So I think it's a beautiful exchange between the ancestors, right? The story is so ancestral. It's so ancient. Ancestral. And the ancestors really throughout the show really kind of push the characters forward in moments, you know, in the exorcism scene. It's, you know, you cannot move towards the future until you confront the past, right? And so I think that is part of Leti's arc, is she is forced to reconcile the mission that ancestors have placed on her in order to claim her destiny. And I mean, it's something I talk about a lot, this idea of blood memory, you know, this visceral ancestral connection to the oppression of my people, to the joy of my people, to the radicalization of my people, right? You know, so it definitely, in those moments, it just gets activated as an artist. It's quite humbling.
And in what you're talking about, Jurnee, I think that for me, it's partly that it's like, that's scary. That blood memory is scary. That power, think of how powerful we are, is scary. And I think that that's part of what we were exploring in Leti's journey as well, is this idea of this is a very powerful source, and used wrong, magic used wrong, it's evil, it's bad. It can do so many bad things in the world. And that's what she's seeing. You know what I mean? I feel like that's what we see of power a lot, at least what I see, where I'm just like, I don't want to be rich because rich people do bad things. I don't want to be in control of anything because everyone I see who's in control of something does bad things. But is that true? Or are those people just doing bad things? Like, we can make a choice to take money. We can make a choice, you know, it's a tool, and we can make a choice to do good with that tool. And I think that that was part of what we were exploring with Leti's character, was this hesitation, because every use of this magic has only turned bad.
It's so
I'm afraid of stepping towards that and becoming bad too.
It's so funny to hear you talk about that, because those are actual conversations that Misha has had with me.
But, you know, to dig into sort of the ancestral bloodline, family lineage, I mean, even family chosen and blood alike, I felt like that was also a major theme, you know, not just of the finale, but also of the season. You know, by the end of the season, we're seeing, you know, Leti and Ruby come to, you know, sort of a strange understanding. You know, shortly before the very end of the season, and we find out what happens to Ruby. You know, we see Tick in the ancestral plane with his mother. We see Leti joining, you know, Tick's bloodline through this unborn child. We're seeing, you know, Hippolyta return to the present of the show, by choosing to be Dee's mother. There are so many, you know, Gia, she joins the family, you know, basically she's welcomed into the fold as a member of the family because she is an important part of Tick's past. In what ways did you hope to deepen or redefine the viewer's conceptions of what or who family is?
You know, I think it starts with just, we talked a lot about in the writer's room. I said at the end of the day, this is a family drama. It's big, it's scopy, it's got magic, it's got fantastical elements, but we have to start in a place of exploring what it means to be family. And I don't know, that was an exploration for me too. I think coming to the end of it, you know, one of the lines that Leti says in the finale is that, you know, family is not obligation. And I feel like that's so much what we think of family sometimes. It's like, oh, that's my sister. That's it. That's the end of the story. But no, it's not the end of the story. You actually have to do something. You have to do some work and some action around being someone's sister, being family to people. And I think that was the thing we were exploring throughout this season, this idea of what is owed to this word family, and how do we conduct ourselves when we call people family. And that was an interesting up and down roller coaster, because it's different. It's hard. I think family is a very hard thing, and that is your family that you are born into, and also your chosen family. I think that part of, the journey of understanding family is understanding that is a sacred thing that is owed something to.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, even if you're born into a blood family, you still have, as a human being, some sort of, you still owe them the act of loving them. It's not just a given that you guys are in relationship. It's like you still owe your blood family being good to them. If that's, something that can happen within your relationship, and it's not too far damaged, where, there's nothing that you can do. You still owe them some love.
Like, your blood family is a choice that you have to make at some point. You have to choose to be part of that family. And I think that is part of, growing, is realizing, oh, this isn't just a thing that happens. Like, it has to actively, we have to work on it and make it happen. I think about that every time Thanksgiving rolls around. I'm like, oh man.
Because it was a ride. Y'all jam-packed a lot into 10 episodes. So let's start from the beginning. What made each of you want to work on this show?
Jurnee?
Well, several things. I won't get into the long version of the story, but the short version is that Misha and I had just finished season 2 of Underground together, and it had aired, been canceled for no reason really that we couldn't understand. And I was in this space of, like, for the first time in my career, getting incoming offers because of the work we had done together on Underground. And I was, I was aware of the fact that Misha was working on this. She'd gone away to, like, write the pilot, and she's kind of just passed me the script very casually to send it to me. Now, mind you, I'd been reading all these other scripts and sending them actually to Misha to be like, hey, what do you think of this? And everything she would say, Jurnee, is trash. You can't do that. You can't do that. Pass. It's enough. And so then she just sent me the script of Lovecraft Country, the pilot, but she wasn't offering it to me. She's like on some, hey, so this is what I wrote in like 3 weeks or something crazy. And I just immediately, the very first page, when you meet Atticus, and it's this dream sequence, and it's a soldier in the Korean War, and you've got this alien, and then Jackie Robinson, and I just was like, wait, what the fuck is she doing? I was just so drawn into, wait, this is a genre. It feels like a genre that I'm aware of, but it feels different and fresh and exciting. And then by the time I got to Leti, I was like, who the hell is she? Hi, hello, hi, hello, here, I mean, just the way Leti's introduced, I just was, you can't describe it as an artist. You just know. I mean, there was no doubt in my mind that I was absolutely born to play Leti Lewis, and was not going to quit until I made that happen, to the point that when I finished the script, I was freaking out because I'm like, well, what is going on? Like, why is she offering this to me? I mean, literally, I lost sleep, y'all. Like, I literally lost sleep, like thinking, does she know that there was no one but me? So yeah, there's just so many reasons. It deconstructs the classic genre in such a radical and bold and audacious way. I knew it from the very first script. I knew it from the pilot, being a fan of Misha's writing, but also just being a fan of the genre and the opportunity to do something disruptive, the opportunity to center Black voices in a genre that we've been shut out from for so long. I'm like, she can't go off and do this without me. Like, I mean, I don't know if that answered your question. And I said I was a short version, and that wasn't a short version. That was like the medium short version.
No, it was perfect.
Let me just say, if you ask me this question, I get really excited.
I mean, I've been a horror fan since I was a kid. So the genre space I love. I've loved it for as long as I can remember. So it was kind of a no-brainer. It's like once I saw Matt Ruff's book, I had just seen the cover and I was like, oh, we'll do that. That'll be fun. Let's go.
So you knew.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. I was just like, oh, this is set in 1950s, Jim Crow, and it's about Lovecraftian monsters and the racism.
You were like, so done. What more do you need to say?
No more. No, we don't need to. I just saw the cover. I was like, we don't need to do more. And then I read the first chapter. I was like, okay. And then I got to chapter 5, Ruby's chapter, and I was like, yeah, we're definitely going to do this because that felt scary. And I love things that feel scary when you're thinking of, when I'm at least thinking about tackling a story. I'm like, something that's going to make me kind of cringe a little is kind of the most exciting to me because then we're going somewhere dangerous. And I feel like storytelling has to go somewhere dangerous, or why are we doing it?
I want to come back to Ruby's story in a moment, and definitely why you initially saw it and thought, oh, this is scary, and I want to talk about it. But first, you mentioned that you both are fans of the horror genre. I am too. And actually, even though this is a television show, every single episode felt like its own homage to a specific corner of the genre. It's like, episode 3 felt like a ghost story. Episode 4 reminded me of like some Raiders of the Lost Ark. There was like episode, I want to say it was Ruby's episode where you get to, some like body horror and transformation, reminded me kind of The Fly. Talk to me about like why the horror genre was so appealing and what specifically you were seeking to do by placing Black people at the center of it.
It's appealing to me because I guess, I feel like being a Black person in America, you're living in a horror movie. So it's always appealing, this idea of being able to put something here, feel stuff, emote stuff, and then get to push through it. And I feel like the horror genre has always been that for me, where I'm like, it's scary. And I get to go and be scared and then conquer that fear. Even if the characters in it don't conquer that fear, I get to conquer it by watching it, saying it was there for an hour, for 2 hours, and I did it. And so that's one of the reasons I always loved that. And then I always, for me, I'm the horror genre pulls it to me in genre because I'm kind of obsessed with this idea of what we were willing to do for metaphorical and physical survival. So I think this genre is perfect for exploring that theme. Yeah, that's what I love.
It's obviously a period piece, and so of course you think period piece. And you observe and explore many different areas throughout the show and different geographical locations throughout the show. But and so I'm like, okay, of course you're going to do period piece. You're going to do research for that. But something that I'm realizing over the course of the show is that like you had to do also like witchcraft research and like. You know what I mean? Like y'all were into it deep. I'm not even religious, but I was like, I don't know. I'm like, I know my grandma was somewhere. It's like exactly. But yeah, but I'm wondering, how did you prepare to engage those magical elements of the series, and also how did you do the research to be able to deliver on that front?
You read a lot, and then you talk to people. I'm curious as to what research you did, Jurnee. What was your because I know you would do an extensive reading list and all that stuff too.
Yeah, no, I did do a lot, and it was scary because of everything in the world. I mean, like snakes don't scare me, insects, spiders, whatever. That stuff doesn't scare me. But the supernatural world, the spiritual realm. Yeah, that and me, we don't do well. And yet, this is what I chose on. It's funny because I remember talking with Misha because in doing the research, just the different forms of witchcraft or magic or voodoo, all this different. I saw her with it was episode 3, right? When we had to do
oh yeah.
And I was like, so I am all about authenticity and like keeping it peaceful. Like we gotta go deep, we gotta be real, yes. But in this moment,
you were basically exercising a bunch of trapped spirits from a haunted
when
house.
I tell you I was in prayer, my pastor, we had like after the exorcism scene, there were things I had to do to like shed myself of Letty, and like it got real deep. I won't go too deep because it'll be boring. But yeah, it was because on the show we use experts. So if you're going to speak a language, it's a real language that has been developed, right? The language of Adam is not like it's not we just speaking some gibberish. It's now a real, So that's the approach that we all take of just trying to make everything authentic, but with casting ghosts, out and doing an exorcism. That was where I figured out.
But see, and this is the thing. Jurnee would ask me, she was like, so are we sure? Like these words we're saying. And I'm like, the thing we did was we tried to take authentic stuff, but mix it up. So it's not one thing we're doing. So it's not like we took the exact rules of how to do an exorcism from any like religion or culture and did that exact thing. We took a couple things from a bunch and put it together.
Yeah,
and in my mind, I'm going, that's never going to work. Nothing real would happen there unless it was meant to happen. And then how are you going to stop that?
See,
I like that clause. Unless.
And here's the thing. I long ago had, watched this documentary about The Exorcist, the movie, and just like how all the real, unexplained events happened and there were some deaths and I just remember thinking, we can't do that. Like we can't step into that world. So, yeah, I was grateful that she was on the same page of doing this like gumbo pot of it and not for that.
No, I mean it was definitely like some aspects of it felt really, really real. Like I didn't grow up in any type of like Vodun or Yoruba tradition or anything like that. But my mom's mom, when my mom and her sister and my aunt were small, she would cut pieces of their hair and burn them as like a protection. Like some of the things that were happening in the series were, reminded me of bits and pieces of things that I'd seen in my own family, church-going family. But still, like some of those things felt very real and felt, like something that was known to me. And I'm sure I'm not the only, Black viewer who felt that. So another thing I've been thinking about with Letty and being sort of at the center of this ghost story, adventure story, horror story, is that she kind of got to be the final girl. So often in horror films, you have this sort of final girl trope, which is like, usually
a couple times too, because she came back.
Exactly.
Came back.
She died and came back. You were dedicated. Letty was going to be there. But it was so amazing to get to the very end, to see that, despite everything that had happened, the Black woman was actually the final girl in, the Lovecraft Country universe. So frequently in horror, it's like, you're going out at the beginning of the film, like in a Scream 2 situation with Jada Pinkett, where it's like, okay, the credits haven't even come up and, the Black girl's already out or the Black character's already gone. There are so many things about Letty that were remarkable and that felt really notable. And one of the things that I loved about her was that she was angry. She got to be outraged. And when she was angry, she wasn't afraid to find an outlet to express it. I think that in real life, so many of us, myself included, feel like, okay, well, I can't do that. I can't say that because I'm going to be the angry Black woman. And sometimes I'm not even thinking about that consciously. It's just a habit of behavior. But with Leti, it's like if she is mad, she's going to curse you out. She will pick up a baseball bat and take it to your car. She will fight back. She will speed, to get away from whatever danger is chasing her. Talk to me, Jurnee, about how as an actor, you tapped in to communicate Leti's rage.
Well, I didn't have far to go, just so you know. It is a juggling of, so I had a lot of stories. No, I mean, I think it is true what you're saying. Why are we so afraid to show Black female rage on screen? Why are we expected to just kind of like, we experience it just like everybody else, I think for Misha and I, it was just about telling the truth. It's like, okay, understanding where Leti's coming from, understanding who her mama is, what her family life was like, knowing her background. Okay, so place her smack dab in this situation. Someone put a cross on her fucking lawn. Okay, like what is she gonna do? What is this girl gonna do? This woman gonna do? And then go with that, and I think it's just about it's just about telling the truth. It's literally that simple. I don't think it gets much deeper than that. It's just like, okay, she's not always strong. She's flawed. She's afraid sometimes. She does unquestionable things. Sometimes she's selfish as hell. Sometimes she makes a left when she should make a right. Okay, so why can't we display that? Like why, without judging it, right? Like without judging, without being afraid to bear witness to who we are. We are complex as women. We're not one thing. We're not the title that they put on us. So I appreciate that about Misha's writing, is that she's not afraid to embrace the truth. It's like no judgment there. Like maybe that in hindsight, maybe that wasn't the smartest decision, and maybe it led to this, but what she felt, and I love that Leti's so in touch with what she feels. It's like, what are the contradictions that play out when you do that, right? Like we discussed a lot of Leti's sexuality, and like, okay, society would look at someone like Leti and be like, oh, she's promiscuous. Just because she's comfortable in her body, just because she's very self-possessed, just because, she's not afraid to dance on a man, she's not afraid to feel her sexuality, but don't mean that she's actually had sex, right? Which is, people still, I see online being like, well, was she a virgin or not? Yes, y'all, she was a virgin, okay? Why is it so hard to believe? Sorry, I'm going on a tangent, so stop me.
No.
Misha, you want to?
But yeah, no, but you talked about Leti's rage. It's interesting because, Misha, a character that I struggled with probably the most, and who you mentioned when you were reading the book, when you were reading Matt Ruff's book, and you came across her chapter, you were like, oh, Ruby, we have to do this. Ruby is played by the fantastic Wumi Saku. Like, she's amazing. Gorgeous. Like, I mean, I'm ready to see. She got a new horror movie coming out on Netflix. I'm like, I will be watching that. Absolutely no problem whatsoever. I will be on it. And to see her as Ruby, so covet the things that whiteness can get, that she goes through this grotesque body snatcher style transformation. At times, I was just sitting there like, what is, like, it was a lot for me to process. I had just gone through this whole thing where I was reading a lot of books. I happened to be reading a lot of books about passing. And then I happened to see Ruby's storyline. Wow. And it still was a lot for me to process. But, as we're talking, it almost feels like where Leti is this open valve. And she'll release her anger. She'll say the thing. She'll dance on the guy. Ruby seems like somebody who operates a little bit more out of the obligation that we were talking about earlier. It's like if their mother needs something, she's going to be there. If Leti needs a place to stay, Ruby's got it. It's almost like where Leti is expression, Ruby is suppression. Talk to me a little bit more, Misha, about how you conceptualize the character of Ruby and what drove you to write her plot line out in this way.
I think for me, Ruby, it's a very strange thing because I feel like I don't quite have the same feelings about Ruby that a lot of people have about Ruby.
Say more about that.
I don't know if I see Ruby's story of one as suppression, if other than the fact of what all Black people do in suppressing themselves to live in a white supremacist world. I don't know that Ruby is any more so than Leti, to be honest, in that context. I just think she's going on a different path in a different way to do it. She's still chosen how she thinks she can get what she wants. And that thing is freedom. She wants to be uninterrupted. And that is the thing that white women have. They get to be uninterrupted. So it's the natural step to go, well, then if I was white, I would be uninterrupted. And then she sees that, she gets that, and she goes, that ain't it either. And that's kind of what Christina's saying to her. It's like, you got magic now. Like, make your own rules. And that's what she's like, I want to learn magic and make my own rules. Like, that doesn't seem suppressed to me. That feels like a person who's like, I have decided I want to be uninterrupted and I will do anything to get that. At least that's what was exciting about Ruby for me, and this idea of a story being dangerous, because the minute you say a Black woman wants to take a potion to be a white woman, everybody goes, okay, now listen, we love being Black, we are this, no, this is not. And I mean, these things happen in the room. Like, we literally had like a good 3 weeks where it was everybody in the room going, no, and me going, but why no? Why no? Why are you afraid? Because I asked a simple question. I said, would you take a potion to become white if you could? And everybody was like, no. And I was like, you saying no too loud right now. I don't believe you. Convince me why. And I feel like that's where we got into some really interesting conversations, because again, it became then, well, Ruby, because Ruby is like, it's about this and she wants this. And I was like, Ruby wants to be uninterrupted. How does she get to be uninterrupted as a Black woman in the 1950s? Well, she could be white. And here is the chance for her to be offered that opportunity. But I'm like, that's not enough to stop there. We have to go deeper into the story. Because one of the things is then it's like, okay, so she takes the potion and she goes on her Julia Roberts shopping spree. And I was like, what? That's not what would happen. If you take a potion to be white, you don't go on a Julia Roberts shopping spree. It's like Ruby's sitting in a park and reading a newspaper and having her ice cream and the simplicity of going about her day. Like, that's scary.
Uninterrupted.
Like, it's scary to think it's that simple. That on the other side, if you had a change of skin color, you could go through your day uninterrupted.
And when you first read the book, like, were you immediately at that point where you were just like, okay, this is an interesting idea, let's run with it? Or did you have that same sort of pang of discomfort too that you expressed the other Black women in the writer's room having? Like, was it something where you kind of had to go through that first and then they went through it too?
No, because
you immediately were like,
yeah, because I think that comes from loving the horror genre as much as I love the horror genre. The understanding that it's a metaphor on top of something else when done right. That it's the metaphor that allows us to really explore this real life thing. And so for me, I just immediately went, oh my gosh, this is the perfect way to explore some really difficult conversations.
Yeah, no, it definitely brought up a lot of difficult conversations. I mean, I got the chance to interview Shana Houston for my show. And, she had said the same thing where she was just like, there are so many different concessions that Black people make all the time in life on a day-to-day basis that aren't necessarily taking a potion, but things that we do here and there to get by that we've accepted as just a price that you pay to be able to move relatively uninterrupted. And it was just interesting, like to your point about the horror genre, to see, like, I don't know, just sort of looking at Ruby's desire for, lack of interruption and thinking, okay, what's the most shocking or the most like shocking, I guess, but familiar way that we can express that. And then you could sort of arrive at a character like Ruby. But yeah, no, it definitely it was something that I had never been presented with before as a viewer. And it's really interesting the way that you describe the writer's room, almost like 3 weeks of like 12 Angry Men, where they start up and they're like, we're not gonna do it. And then slowly you get everybody.
I mean, but to me, that's where you get the most interesting stuff, where it's that idea of going, would you take, it is funny you say 12 Angry Men, because it's trial. Tell me why you wouldn't take this potion to be white. Tell me why that's an absolutely no and should never, ever happen. Tell me that. Explain me into that. Show me down that path. And I think that is part of storytelling, is taking a thing, a theme, a concept, and going, okay, now let's go on both sides of it and go. Let's go at it and not be afraid to have that kind of constructive conflict that brings out a story that makes you think deeper about yourself. And I think for me, I saw the Ruby chapter as kind of a thesis for the whole show, to say, let's not be afraid to ask some questions that make us a little bit uncomfortable. Let's not be afraid to do that and see where that leads us. And therefore hope that it will open conversations for people to have more conversations about, because, you know, Ruby's storyline, a lot of people have a lot of feelings about it. And I'm like, great. And now let's talk about those feelings. That's not to say where we ended with Ruby's story or with Letty's story or with anybody's story in the show is the end all be all of an ending. Let's have a conversation. Tell me your side of it. And I think that a lot of people are sometimes afraid to have that constructive conflict. They're like, "Ew, that feels like conflict and I don't like it." But it's like, it's constructive conflict that helps us move and grow to better places.
Mm-hmm. So, you know, Jurnee has been interesting to see. Well, it's just been interesting to see you both in separate locations. Oh, sorry, you seem like you're about to add something. I don't want to.
No, I was just gonna say, like, it is one, as a Black woman in 2020, you know, like we're thinking about it through that point of view as well, right? But when you think about how, as Black women, we have always had to negotiate spaces, right? We walk into, when you step outside your home, essentially you are stepping into enemy territory, whether you're aware of it or not, whether it's in your psyche or not, in your subconscious or not. In 1955, I mean, think about how high the stakes were, right? Like how much there was to gain and to lose, right? When faced with these choices. And I love what Misha's saying about, yeah, like just unpacking the really uncomfortable stuff in our past, right? You know, like unpacking the folks who did make the choice to pass, the folks who did make the choice to leave their lineage behind, to erase, because society was constantly erasing us as Black people, still are. We're still in a battle, right? Like, so when you think about it through that point of view, it really makes you confront really like uncomfortable things, right? And I agree. I love the conversations that have stimulated from all of these different storylines, because it's not about right or wrong. It's just about, okay, here's a truth, right? And like, now how does that make you feel, right? When confronted with that, how uncomfortable does that make you feel?
And also, it's not even saying here's a truth. It's like, here's something that feels true, that we're moving towards something that feels true. Is it? Because truth, it changes. You learn new things. There's new things that you bring to a moment, and something that feels true here doesn't necessarily feel true here. And so I think it's that too. It's for me, not being afraid to question that, not being afraid to go in the direction of going, why does the idea of a Black woman, a dark-skinned Black woman, taking a potion to be white scare you so much? Why? Why is there that fear there? Because that's what the no is. The no is fear. You know what I mean? So I'm going, why? Why is that fear there? Why not explore it instead of running from it?
And again, the metaphor of, well, how many times have we had to sell off a piece of ourselves to enter into spaces that didn't welcome us? How many times? And while we may have to do it less now as being Black women in 2020 than our mothers or our grandmothers or what have you had to do, but how many times has society demanded that we shrink or we erase a little bit of our Blackness in order to make them more comfortable, right? In order to welcome us at the table, right? And so, yeah, it's uncomfortable. It's real uncomfortable to go there. I'm uncomfortable right now, y'all. I'm uncomfortable.
It's interesting to see you all interact, even though you're in separate locations, and just reflect on the experience that you had together of making this show, a show that does make people so uncomfortable, and that also seems like it was probably a real journey to make. But this is not the first time you all have worked together. You worked together, as you mentioned, on a show that Misha co-created called Underground, and Jurnee, you played the lead, as you all know. But I'm curious. I'm seeing the kind of chemistry that you all have, not even being in the same place. I want to know from each of you, what is your favorite thing about working with the other person?
My favorite thing is the banter. But the second favorite thing is I think that Jurnee does a thing which I do, which is keep peeling back the layers, keep going deeper, keep going, keep going, keep going. There's no stopping, I think. And that is a little bit of manic craziness that we both have, where it's just like there's always something more in a deeper level to go in finding who and what is truth. And I think that that is part of the thing that we bond with in our art in these characters, is that we go, okay, let's keep going deeper. Nope, deeper. There's another layer. What is it? It's never one thing. How many things is it? And, I feel like we're those people that have to put it on screen at some point, but we're always in a constant exploration, and we're not done with it even as it goes on screen.
It's so true. It's like we're constantly being like, yeah, but why? Okay, but if she did this, I mean, does this feel true? Or yeah, but then when this person's, we're constantly, and it's funny because in Underground, when we first started, it was a different kind of constant, like step more combative. Well, we won't get into that because we talked about this.
Okay.
No, but it's exactly the same thing. It was what we didn't realize because there was no trust at the beginning of Underground was the exact same thing. And that's what I mean by the manicness of it, where it was like we would show up to set and we'd be like, we're not done. We have to go a layer deeper and a layer deeper and a layer deeper and layer deeper. And that would be 20 minutes later of us arguing on set, and people would be like, are we ever going to shoot this? Or not? And now there's trust. So it's like we understand we're both digging. We're still digging. It's a different, it's what makes it so interesting, because we're trusting, we're both digging for the truth here. And when we both hit on something that feels true, that's when it's super exciting. And then we also will be like, nah, we ain't there yet. We ain't there.
And then there's times where we're like, oh, that surprised us both, right? Of like, oh.
Talk to me about a moment like that happened while you were filming Lovecraft.
The exorcism scene. It was, there was a moment when Leti says, you're not dead yet, you can still fight, right? And I don't remember what it was, but in doing it, it kind of clicked with both of us. And Misha walked up to me and she said, Letty's talking to herself. It's Letty's not dead yet. She can still fight. It was like that's right. It's not just an exorcism of the spirit, it's an exorcism of Leti, right? All this time she's been going through she's speaking of rebirth, right? And so that was a moment that we both were like, ooh, that's good. We're going with that.
No, you can see it in the scene. Like when you let out when Leti screams in that scene, first thought was, okay, Emmy. Second thought was was just like, I mean, it was the kind of scream that I think that a lot of us have wanted to let out, especially in this moment for a variety of reasons. It felt real and it felt immediate. And it makes so much sense that you all were, you know, in connection with each other in that moment. It definitely, definitely comes across. Okay, so
That's how we felt.
now that she's
right there.
what's that?
That deep sigh was how we felt after the exorcism.
I bet.
Okay, well.
And speaking of deep sighs, though, you all have completed this season of Lovecraft Country, and this is the third season of television that you've made together as creator and star. I wonder, how has making Lovecraft changed each of you?
That's another hard one for me to answer, since I only finished the last touches on the finale 3 weeks ago.
Oh, it's fresh.
It's fresh.
It's fresh.
It feels very fresh. It's like, obviously I'm a completely different person than when I started it 3 years ago. So,
wow.
Wow. Yeah, it's been a long, long journey, a roller coaster, and it's kind of too soon for me to say what definitively it is. Jurnee?
Yeah, no, I feel you about that. I mean, it is tough because it's so fresh and stuff, but there are a few things when I think back just to the pilot, my life was just so different, Lord. It was the first time I went back to work full time as a mom.
Wow.
And there's been so much shedding of my old self since then. And the realization that in order to move forward, not everybody coming along for the ride, and there's so much grief in that, right? There's so much, it's very sobering to own that. I've had to understand how to let go of that which doesn't serve me, and Leti pushed me a lot in that, I had to become very efficient in my craft, in my technique, in my approach, in my life, because the role was so damn demanding, right? And yet my son was so young, and I'm doing all these things for the first time in my life.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, well, I can't come home or come back into my trailer and nurse my son, and my spirit is like, he's going to feel all this stuff. And so it made me have to kind of adjust my approach in my craft in so many ways, which I'm still adjusting, I'm still evolving. So yeah, it forced me to grow. When I tell you, I mean, I feel like my growth it's accelerated. But it's interesting because before Lovecraft, I remember having a conversation with Misha. That's what I was saying earlier. She had that conversation with me of like, so when are you going to be great? Well, she literally said that to me. So when are you going to walk in your business?
It did not happen just like
that. That's a challenge, though. That's a challenge.
Okay, maybe that's not verbatim of what she said. It's how my brain interpreted it. Of like, so bitch, come on. But it was that I for sure was more so complacent in being safe, I guess. In I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know entirely.
I think it goes back to the conversation we were having earlier, this fear of power and that power that you have, and looking and naming and seeing how other people use it, and being afraid that you might do that same thing. And so that makes you shrink from it. And I feel that even myself all the time. I look at how people run their sets, how Hollywood is, and I'm just like, I don't want it because it's icky. And it's like, but it doesn't have to be. That's the truth. It doesn't have to be. And it's like, yes, it's more work for it not to be. Yes, it's more work for you to stand in your power than it is to shrink from it. But we have to do that, and we have to keep moving towards that. And I feel like that's what I was saying to you in probably
Yeah,
a
it is.
eloquent way.
Yeah.
If you would just
No, it is true. Essentially, what I was saying to her is how yucky the industry is, and having like been in it my whole life, and it's always been something I've rejected. Of like, I don't want to be in the world or of the world, right? Like, so how do I pursue what I love? How do I not neglect those who I love? And how do I not let, like, I just didn't want, it's like the little things. I'm like, I don't want to do that press, or I don't want to be on that magazine. I don't want to go to that party. I don't want to play the game. Like, I just want to do the work. Misha, I just want to do the work, right? And her, for sure, pushing me or pushing back and challenging me and saying, yeah, but there's something else in there. Like, what's in your shadow?
Peeling back those layers like you were talking about.
Yeah.
In the spirit of peeling back layers, I have one more question before we turn to, I have an audience question for each of you that have been collected from the 92nd Street Y, audience. But before we get to that, it seems like, Misha, you said something earlier in our conversation that made me think about like this quest that it seems like every character on Lovecraft Country was going on, but specifically the Black female characters, which is the quest for freedom. We saw it with Diana and her comic books, and we saw it with, Hippolyta, and, not just her journey, but her interest in travel and in the cosmos. We see it with Letty and her constant running. We see it with Ruby and, her desire to live an uninterrupted life. All of these people are looking for freedom. And so I asked each of you, what does freedom mean to you?
I was really trying to think of what Nina Simone said to that question. Like, it's the tip of my brain right now to just be like, let me.
I'll take a paraphrase
from Miss Nina. What does freedom look like for me? That's such a complicated question, because I think that for me, freedom starts in your mind. And I think that imagination, you can't know what freedom looks like until you can imagine it for yourself. And for me, I think that that's where I start. I'm on a journey on how do I free this? You know what I mean? Because until I free this, it doesn't matter what freedom looks like out here. And maybe when I free this, this won't matter if it's free or not out here. You know what I mean? So that's the question I keep asking myself. I keep thinking of being, what does it mean to be uninterrupted? Which is why that's one of my favorite storylines, in the show. I think about, there was this like Erykah Badu interview in which she was like, there ain't nothing out here for me. And I was like, that's so interesting to me, that concept of like, there's nothing out here for me to tell you what is free and what's not free, because I'm free in here. So.
It is interesting. We talked a lot about that during Underground, actually. Like the idea of mental enslavement is actually more potent than the physical shackles. That if you can possess the mind, you can possess the body, right? If you can convince someone that they are not free, they will internalize their own oppression and then do the work of the oppressor.
Yeah.
And
I think that narratives, we make our lives by narratives, and we are so constricted in what narratives we think we can tell, like what stories we think we can tell. I think it's that thing that they say now, it's like, if you see it, you can be it. And I'm like, you don't even have to see it. You have to be able to imagine it and know it and hear. And that's about telling a story, telling the story of what your life is and what your life can be. And I think that we have atrophied our storytelling apparatuses and everyone. And part of that has been done by the biggest narrative machine in the world, which is Hollywood.
Right.
I think it's so important to wrestle these stories back and say, keep that definition of what a story is, and I think that's the closest definition I can give to going towards freedom, is wrestling a narrative back from the people who are oppressing us.
Mm. Jurnee, what about you? I know, snaps.
I mean, it's absolutely true. It's why, like, storytelling is so inherent to humanity. I mean, it dates back to prehistoric days. I mean, it is evident that storytelling, the need to be acted out to or to act. I mean, children do it. Okay, it's like it's inherent to who we are as human beings, and it's no wonder why those who have, I mean, you know, the traditional gatekeepers, what they try to grasp and master is the art of storytelling. So they try to buy up the media. They try to, and you know, whether it's politics or whether it's Wall Street. I mean, you look at it like they are masters at storytelling. What narrative are they feeding us about themselves and about us? Because if we can buy into the narrative, then we just do the work for them. Then we're little robots, right? You know, we don't question, we don't vote, we don't come against the patriarchy or white supremacy. We don't tear down the systemic racism that the nation's been built upon, because we believe there's no other option, right? We believe we have to operate in white supremacy, right? Because they've hijacked our stories. Like, our history has been erased from history books because they don't want us to know that our people rebelled. They don't want us to know that, no, our people fought back. No, our people had a Black Wall Street. Okay, and not just Tulsa, we had several.
Yeah.
Several.
Durham, North Carolina, several.
And there's so many folks to this day who do not know that. And you know why they don't know that is because it's been erased. And why has it been erased? Because if you can see that our folks did it in 1921, then you're like, damn it, the hell, I'm gonna do it now, right? So it's absolutely true. If we can take back our own narrative, if we can stop them from co-opting our history, right, and overlooking our history and erasing our history, that's one step to freedom.
Oh, so beautifully put, the freedom of a story. I thank you both for answering my questions. I have one question for each of you from our audience. Misha, you're up first. Where were the Tulsa scenes shot? And also, how did you approach the music selections? This person had a twofer. So where were the Tulsa scenes shot, and how did you approach the music selections?
We shot this season in Atlanta, Georgia. So that's where they were shot. And then the second part was, how did I approach the music selections?
Yeah, music selections.
I just put my iPod on shuffle. And yes, I listen on an iPod, and I just put it.
I was gonna say, you said you're what?
Yeah, and I put it on shuffle, and then I just throw the song in. No, that's
really. I know. I was like, oh, deliberate.
It's tough to say how you pick music. It's music. I feel like it's so this feeling, and so it's just about, you're watching something, and then you go, oh, this, let's try this on there. And then that doesn't work at all. Then you're like, if that didn't work. And then you're like, Jurnee will be like, I'm listening to this today. And I'll be like, that's not it either. I don't like that at all. And then you hear something and you're just like, oh my God, it was always this, you know? And I feel like it's kind of the same as when you're finding how to tell a story and those beats fall into place. And you're just like, how did I think it was anything else other than this? It's so obvious it's this. And I feel like that's how I feel about the music. I just try to listen to a bunch and then move towards what feels right for each scene.
All right, and Jurnee, question for you. How did you prepare for such a physically demanding role? I am wondering the same thing. I was telling my fiance last night. I was like, she must have ran track, like all this running. So how did you prepare for such a physically demanding role?
Well, in the pilot, again, I had Hunter like a year and a half prior to that. So I started working out with my trainer, Jeanette Jenkins, the months leading up to shooting, just to kind of like get in more shape, you know. Yeah, it was just that, you know, I grew up with a big family of 4 brothers and 1 sister, and we would race each other all the time. And so when I read in the script that she's, you know, she was a track star in high school, I was like, oh, okay, I got it. You know, let me just run and stuff. So yeah, I mean, I love the physicality of characters. It's definitely a part of the process. The movement, the posture, you know, all those things are. I pay a lot of attention to it. But also, Misha's always just kind of demanding that her characters are bloody, are running. I mean, so it's just like, okay, I'm gonna do a Misha Green project. Let me get the butt spray.
The story's demanding that. I didn't demand it. It's the story and what was happening.
Yep.
Gotta run from the monsters.
Yep.
You were definitely running from some monsters. You were running very, very quick. Well, I'm afraid we are out of time. It was a pleasure to speak with both of you today, especially after, you know, 10 episodes of like pretty much every type of horror I could imagine, plus racism and time travel. I had questions and you answered them. So thank you so much for speaking with me today.
Thank you for your questions.
Thank you.